Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Marketing Corner. We're back with Liam from Cognism, episode 137. And again, as a bit of a disclaimer, if you haven't heard the first episode, then what are you doing here? So listen to the first one and then then come back to this one. But Liam's still here. Cognism is very known for doing a lot of cool demand gen stuff and like being like front leader on demand gen in general, in my opinion. I think so. We talked a little bit about the journey in episode 1 here of it, but and one in the first part, and what we want to talk a little bit about more is like how do you build a demand gen brand? Understanding a little bit like what's the difference between the brand and demand gen, like in this, how those terms sometimes get a little bit blurry for most people. So I think we don't have to intro you, Liam. So I think what I want to like to do is to start with like a little bit about what does brand mean in a demand gen world. So can you explain brand to me in your understanding from where you come at Cognism?
Yeah, so I think the main thing that switches from switching to like the demand gen model is that actually brand gets to play at its best again. I think lead gen by its very nature is performance based, really. It's all about driving those leads. And then actually I think when a lot of companies in the space ran a lot more lead gen, brand often got neglected a lot because actually to get sign off for those brand plays were very difficult because everything was so heavily invested on that lead and performance sort of way of doing it. Also, what would happen is you'd lead with that lead gen model. So you lead with getting the leads in, and then actually you try and sort of retrofit the brand awareness and building after that. You acquire the data, then you nurture them. And really nurturing is just getting your brand in front of them, which was done via email. So when you do demand gen first, which means that you're educating your buyer before they come to you, which is like in educating your buyer, there's like a brand part of it that you need to create brand affinity. You've got to create an emotional tie. You've got to make yourself trusted. You've got to put yourself top of mind. Create demand has a huge brand element in it, really. It's just, these are all just marketing words that we like to use, but it means you flip it on the other side. You now need to nurture and build that brand awareness out in the wild, not via just email and select channels. You've got to do it out on the web. So I think that's how the model kind of changes. So then you have to really define early on, because also you can go to market with anything. I could start creating content about any topic and it could gain traction, and it could, if I stuck a Cognism logo on it and said I worked at Cognism, I could start building some sort of brand and demand, but it could be for the completely wrong person or audience. So you have to really start by defining what you want to be known for, who you are, and therefore what your content engine is going to project out, and how you're going to enable people to keep coming back to you, to learn from you, to then actually create the demand and build the brand within that audience that's going to actually get them to come inbound. So I think that's where like the flip and switch kind of happens, just in that you're in the lead gen model, you're acquiring it first, trying to build it afterwards, and actually demand gen, you're trying to build it first. But then that means that those two systems have to be completely aligned, because whatever way you're positioning yourself as a brand has to completely align with what you're trying to capture later on.
I actually love that, like of saying like lead gen is flipping it the other way. Like I think that's actually just a simple, really good way to put it. Like I kind of love that. You're building the brand after you capture them, which is a little bit weird.
Yeah, with it, I've just sort of thought about this in the last couple of weeks, based on trying.
Actually, I think that's really good.
Yeah, and it's basically based on us trying to hone our existing system to capture more of and drive more of what we want it to drive, and probably from where we've built brand kind of like wide and erratic, and how we can like then tone that down a bit and like narrow it to the people that we really want to be loving us, has kind of made me think that that's where the difference is.
Yeah. And that's actually optimized. I mean, I know this was pre kind of ChatGPT era, but now when you look at how people are searching for things, if you only focused on building the brand once they're part of the process, you're missing all of the you can't rely on Google showing you up anymore because 1 in 3 people are not using Google anymore. So I think the future proofing of that is building the brand and hoping that drives things rather than driving things and then hoping the brand kind of develops through, as you've kind of said. So I think well done.
Yeah, well, I would say that is actually such an interesting point there, actually, and we've been trying to sort of like tout it a bit in our content, that demand generation and ungated content model is future proof because of how LLMs are searching, like are scraping the web, and people are searching in them. It means that SEO is actually moving away itself from a performance channel really to a brand channel. I mean, we saw probably in the last 5 years that the people who ended up having the most success with LinkedIn were the people who moved it away from being a pure performance channel to actually treating it as a brand channel where they can get awareness out there. And that was because there was zero click in LinkedIn, and now there's zero click in search. So I think, before, people used to test LinkedIn all the time. I remember working at companies before, would test LinkedIn, try and get some direct response, try and get some leads. It was performed terribly, and everyone just said the channel didn't work.
Yeah, demo bookings, right? We did demo bookings, $17 a click.
Yeah,
and it wasn't working. So take the money out of LinkedIn.
Yeah. Literally, and I think the same is happening to SEO. There's going to be those that still focused on building out, traffic-based, like working towards traffic-based keywords. We're working towards very top of funnel based keywords that then go to pages that are actually not helpful to their potential customers and prospects. And then that's not going to get picked up by AI. It's just not there. They won't be referenced, and then they won't be served in LLMs. And then all the traffic will be slowly declining because people won't be driven there from SEO either. But they won't be building brand in the place that they need to, which is then being referenced or like mentioned back in obviously the LLM search. I think you can see that exact same sort of pattern happening, and then people are going to be like, SEO doesn't work anymore. But actually what they're doing to try and achieve it isn't working anymore because they're not showing up in the places that people are searching, and it's in the name. Yep. So
Exactly.
How do you so when you start like building the brand, like how do you define ownership inside internally? Like I think internally structure, who owns what? I think that's also some of the things I might have struggled with a little bit before, at least. I don't know if you have, Jen, but I at least felt like brand becomes, everything becomes a little bit fluffy sometimes. And it becomes like who owns what. And especially when you do brand content, demand gen, you have revenue teams, you have paid media, where you have like everything. Like how do you do that at Cognism, or how do you advise people to look at it?
Yeah, so if we start with like the sort of like brand promise, like the values, mission statement, those sort of things, I think they're owned at like a leadership level, but we put them forward like working in conjunction, like with like other departments, like product as well. And in marketing, it's obviously with brand, we have brand and content, and then you have like product marketing as well. And then obviously you need to get all leadership buy-in in those. So once you've got like what your positioning is, your brand positioning and your promise to your customers, and you set that side out and the values that you then stand by, I think that bit that's your first layer, and that needs everyone's input. Like you can't lead that in silo on your own as a marketing department, because you put it out there and then you see another statement on a slide somewhere, sales are saying something completely different, no one's aligned. What does this company stand for? And then after that, I take it back actually into the content team. So with that layer of like what our mission statement, brand promise, all of that side is, how we position ourselves, we then ask ourselves, what do we want to be known for? Like if we're producing content and people think of Cognism, what do we want to be known for? And we come up with a statement then of what we want to be known for. Like I know Cognism for great demand gen content or something like that. It's more encompassing because we encompass all the personas that we have in it, so it has to hit all of them, but it's like almost a statement of what we're going to be talking about. And then underneath of that, the next layer is, which then the content team work on again, is like a point of view for each persona that we're saying is important. So a point of view in the market that we can just hammer home over and over and over and over again. And everything, that point of view ladders back up into what we want to be known for and into the promise that our brand promise to customers. And then within that, there'll be many topics underneath it that we'll talk about in that point of view. And those topic maps that we create will directly relate now, and this bit's kind of changed, to where we want to be like the topics we want to show up for in LLMs, like when people are asking those questions, which then gets you your visibility there. And then the layer underneath that is then how we distribute that through big rocks, which is collating all that content to do larger campaigns for demand gen, and then also our media machine, which is like the subscriber channels that then sort of suck people into the engine and they keep coming back, and we call them value loops. And so that's a podcast, newsletters, things like that, and they keep getting then served your point of view, which goes back up to your what you want to be known for, and which ladders back up to your brand promise. That layer is devised by the content team, but then agreed with on the demand gen team, and then shared with senior leadership to then make sure that everyone's like aligned with this is what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, because I think that's the important part here. Because I think a lot of people don't necessarily disagree with that. Like, well, let's call it 3 areas of the differentiation between the 3, like leadership, messaging, content, and then the actual distribution. But I think that typically, like, having that, I am a big fan of having these, like, I call them messaging pillars, like, so essentially messaging framework. And it's essentially the same you're describing here, right? Where you just have, like, for each persona, these are our messaging pillars, right? And then you trickle it down to the distribution level. And I think a lot of people, from my experience, struggle with connecting those two. Connecting, because like they built these like messaging, and this is what we want to say, and this is how we want to talk, and like you have your CVI and you have all these things in place, but then when it actually comes to distributing it, there's no connection there. And I find it so funny because like we're all marketeers, and like if we can't even connect that, how do we expect to get sales and marketing alignment if we can't even do this?
Yeah, and that does happen. You have these like messaging pillars or point of views or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, again, kind of doesn't matter. You align on that, you say this is what you're going to talk about, you do loads of content towards it, and then all of a sudden the newsletter and the podcast and your like YouTube channel just take huge swings in different directions, just probably chasing engagement, and then you're actually creating like brand and like and demand in maybe the wrong way or in the wrong segment, because you've kind of chased engagement. So I think it's always about aligning yourself back to how you're going to measure it, so then how you hold that together. So when we think about measurement, try and get the team to measure it and like engagement. So is the content, it has to be engaging. It doesn't, if your point of view or messaging pillar is like rubbish, you might struggle with like engagement, but it might not be rubbish. You just need to find the content that engages, and that's on the team.
Like a lot of like there's a lot of people who are really fast to blame the distribution aspect of it or the platform or whatever, but a lot of it just boils down, if your message is not right, your positioning is not there, then that doesn't really matter. Like you can use whatever platform you want, it doesn't really matter.
Right, exactly. And I think sometimes we put stuff out and we think it's so amazing, but if it's not engaging, you need to figure it out. Then the next bit, it would be audience. So then, okay, your content's engaging, great, perfect, but is it building the right audience? And then that, if it's not, you might have steered too far from your point of view. There might be like you chased engagement too far the wrong way, then tail it back. It needs to, like, for us, we have like a tier 1 segment that we say is like the best customer, like our ICP. Really, we want to be driving that audience on whatever that distribution channel is, and then if we're building that audience in that channel, we know we're creating brand and demand within that tier 1 audience. And then finally, you can then look at ways that you can connect it back to pipeline and revenue to support it. If you've got all 3 in place, it's working. If one is like off, then you're doing something right but something wrong, so you have to like figure it out. So that's kind of how I get them to look at it, to keep you like aligned, like you said, to those messaging pillars that you set out in the first place.
Love it.
That's great.
You have a question, Jen, or
nope, you go ahead.
I really want to hear about one thing, Liam. So in the beginning, in the first part, you also told about like Cognism going from 50 employees when you joined to 500. That's a bit of a journey, right? Like, and I think one of the things that a lot of our listeners often think about is that because they're based in either, they could be in a Series A, a Series B, Series C kind of company, or even a large corporate or whatever. But I think how is the brand changing? How is that like that experience of like doing demand gen and doing brand growth in general? How does that change through the different company stages? Like how is it different when you were 50 people to now you when you're I think 500 people, right?
Yeah. So interestingly, like when we were like a startup, we like the aim was just to scale, and you're like trying to scale as much as possible and build brand in general. So that means you're kind of open to doing it in all sorts of ways. And actually maybe you can like you have like kind of a broader remit to sort of like chase engagement in the persona that the personas you're going after for, rather than being like super specific about like a segment that you're looking at. Um, and that meant that like, and I think Cognism's done this really well. We were particularly good at like evangelizing our users, like getting SDRs to love us, getting marketers to love us, getting like the users behind it who like creating really great user content. And as we were a scaling company as well, and we were just trying to attract anyone, we weren't like focused on particular segments like as much like enterprise or mid-market. We're also going for the SMB micro. We could sort of build in public as part of that brand play. So obviously that's kind of what we did with like demand gen and things like that. And it was kind of like a way of just like chasing engagement, and like then what people that then followed were often other micros and stuff who were like interested in what we're doing, and just building that awareness wherever we could to drive revenue. When we've got bigger and you end up getting more laser focused. Now I no longer just need to build a brand and scale in general. I now know exactly where in the market I need to perform, and then it's honing that engine to actually then build brand within that segment, and it's actually not okay to just cast your net really wide and be like just like cast like like chuck your brand everywhere. One, because obviously it might drive the wrong type of business to you that you know that isn't helpful to business, but like two, it's also just about time. Like the team needs to place its bets well in terms of money and time. So if you're placing it for huge brand reach but you're just not reaching the right people, then you're not going to hit the goals that are now set upon you to actually achieve it in the ICP. So I think that's been the difference. It's like learning what scaling is, like learning just how to get yourself noticed, which is really important in that stage. And now at this stage, it's about how do I get myself noticed by the right people, and how do I get them to like love me, because they're going to actually help us into that next stage of growth more than anyone else.
And that's kind of the way I differentiate it when people ask me, brand is like, do your parents know what you do? And then demand gen is like, do the right people know what you do, right? Because I think they get used. Yeah. That's kind of how
Yeah, that's actually a
see it
really
a
good
lot.
way of doing it. Yeah, I was
So my
saying it.
parents
Yeah.
know what I do, and then because my parents are not going to buy, but then the demand gen is it the right people? I think with the last sort of few minutes, because this has been super, super insightful, but I'd love to hear kind of the lessons you've learned throughout this process, and kind of what pitfalls should our listeners avoid as they embark on this demand gen journey. And then, kind of next step is actionable advice. Like, what do they do today to kind of get them on that journey? What would you say?
Yeah, I think the thinking about the content engine is just really important from the start. I think we have maybe been too experimental sometimes with the content. Starting and actually having a defined content strategy and actually deciding what your brand is and how you want to feed it through is the most important bit, because before we definitely created content just for the case of engagement. I think that's why I spoke so passionately to that point where we're just chuck stuff out that sticks, and we can get loads of engagement, and it's so rewarding to your ego to get loads of engagement. But at the end of the day, when you don't then drive the results that you want from the business, from that type of brand work, you're just actually spinning your wheels. And then we find that the team has been so busy like doing work and achieving nothing, and it's actually really frustrating for everyone involved. So that would be like my biggest lesson. And then I think starting point is really sitting down with leadership, with your marketing team, and deciding, who are you? What do you want? Getting that locked in, making sure that you're pointing yourself to like the right buyer in ICP, and then what that content is that you're going to talk about. And I think if you start there, then and you stick to it, by probably putting the measurement puts in place, then yeah, you can't fail.
Love it. I think I think one of the things I always talk about is just like it feels like such a cliche these days, but like, and we've talked so much about this on the podcast, but for me, it's always been don't like if you start this journey, it's because you have realized you've been chasing some vanity metrics and you need to chase impact. To chase the right metrics moving forward, and you've been chasing the wrong things. So, and I think that's always been for me when I try to convince people on doing demand gen is like, it's fine that you've been chasing these upfront MQLs. Now you need to chase pipeline and close one, right? So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, so easy to do, and so easy to tell yourself you're doing a great job as well, which is it's a hard realization sometimes when you just look in the mirror and accept what you've been up to for the last quarter and it hasn't worked.
Love it, love it. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. But I want to say, like, do you have any shout outs you want to make here, Liam? You did one in episode 1 around your playbook, right? Can you just maybe 30 seconds on what that is, just again?
So there are 2 brand modules actually on that DG playbook. So it is an online resource, completely ungated, where you can get the insights into how we're running demand gen at Cognism and all our tips and tricks. And there's 2 brand modules that are actually done by me, where you can sort of learn that system that we've kind of built and where you start and where you can end up and the content engine behind it.
Love it. Super cool. I think people should definitely check this out. This is a pretty good resource in general.
Definitely.
Not just saying that. I really mean that. So.
Well, that's why we wanted you on the podcast. That's how much we liked it. So yeah, brilliant.
Perfect.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been really insightful, Liam, and thank you for joining us again.
Can I ask, we have 2 minutes. I needed to ask one question before we go, just really quickly for everyone taking. What do you like? Can you say in just, you have 30 seconds. So this is also like a pressure test. What are you most excited about when it comes to marketing in 2026? Is there anything that gets you like, this is exciting?
I think, and because I kind of talked about it and probably went off tangent, is actually everything with LLMs at the moment, and that side, and just AI with it in general. I think it's disrupting everything, which I really like. I've got kind of bored of SEO, to be honest, and it's got me really more excited with it again. And it's flipping it on its head to brand, which I think is more of my favorite. So I'm excited about that. I think it's going to show up people who have been hacking a system and those who are actually good at delivering answers for their prospects.
Yeah, I totally agree. I hear you so much. Like, because I was also a little bit bored of SEO, but now I'm like, oh, it's kind of exciting again. Okay, awesome. Well, cool. Well, that was my question. Thank you so much, Liam. Thanks for coming on, and thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.